The sky didn't split with lightning. It warped. Above the endless forest, beyond the outer territory of Wall Maria, the clouds twisted inward like fabric being wrung by invisible hands. The air grew heavy, still. Even the wind seemed to pause, as if nature itself sensed something unnatural pushing into its world. Then, reality snapped. A sphere of pale blue light detonated midair and slammed into the forest canopy, blasting trees outward and carving a crater into the earth. Dirt, bark, and shattered branches rained down through the clearing. At the center of the impact, a figure lay face down in the soil. For several seconds, nothing moved. Then Silver the Hedgehog gasped sharply and pushed himself up, trembling. That jump was too unstable. His voice came out strained, like his body hadn't fully caught up with existence yet. Fragments of memory flashed violently through his mind. Collapsing timelines, burning cities, the scream of space-time tearing under chaos energy strain. Then silence. Cold, unfamiliar silence. Silver slowly stood, swaying slightly. The forest stretched endlessly around him. No cities, no machines, no energy signatures, no artificial life. Just trees. And something else. A low, distant groan echoed through the woods. Silver froze. Another answered, then another. Heavy footsteps followed. Slow, crushing, wet against the earth. Silver's instincts screamed. He leapt upward, barely stabilizing himself with a weak burst of telekinesis, landing high on a tree branch. The effort alone made his head pound. My power output, he muttered, clenching his hand. It suppressed. The groaning grew louder. Then they stepped into the clearing. Giants. 15 meters tall. Skin stretched too tightly over muscle. Faces frozen in empty, unsettling smiles. Silver's eyes narrowed, scanning rapidly. Biological, but wrong. No energy core. No tech. No control signals. One Titan lifted its head and sniffed the air. Then it turned directly toward his tree. Silver's chest tightened. It senses me. More Titans emerged behind it. 3 total, slowly spreading out, surrounding the clearing without any clear communication, yet somehow coordinated. Silver steadied his breathing. Okay, no panic. Test response. He extended his hand. Blue psychic energy flickered around one Titan's head. The giant staggered slightly as Silver tried to twist its neck. Not to kill, just to disable. The psychic grip shattered almost instantly. Silver's eyes widened. What? The Titan roared and lunged, grabbing the tree trunk and shaking violently. Silver launched upward, barely escaping as the trunk snapped like dry wood beneath him. He landed hard on another branch. Teeth gritted from the impact. The second Titan charged, faster than expected, arms swinging wide. Silver pushed outward instinctively. A telekinetic shockwave blasted forward, knocking the Titan back several steps. But Silver dropped to one knee, mid-branch, gasping. Okay, not good at all. These things weren't just durable. They were resistant. And they were adapting. The third Titan, thinner, faster, didn't charge. It circled instead, cutting off escape angles. Hunting behavior. Silver jumped down to the forest floor and sprinted, forcing weak telekinetic bursts to keep speed. Behind him, trees exploded apart as the Titans followed, relentless and tireless. His lungs burned within seconds. His power reserves felt capped, like this world was pressing down on him. Then, something brushed against his mind. Not a voice. Not quite. More like broken sound forcing itself into meaning. Silver stumbled mid-run. Not right. He froze. Slowly he turned. The lead Titan had stopped chasing. It stood there, staring at him. Not mindless. Focused. Its jaw twitched slightly. Silver whispered, barely audible. What are you... The Titan tilted its head, like it was listening. Then it stepped back. Once, twice, before turning away completely. The other Titans followed without hesitation. Silver stood alone in the broken forest, heart hammering violently. That wasn't hunting, he said quietly. That was recognition. A sudden pressure slammed into his skull. Visions exploded behind his eyes. Walls much larger than cities. Millions of giants marching across oceans. The sky burning red with steam and ash. Humanity screaming as the ground itself moved beneath them. Silver collapsed to one knee, clutching his head. This timeline, he breathed. This isn't just unstable. It's wrong. He looked up at the sky. For a split second, it rippled again, like a wound trying to reopen. Silver's voice dropped to a whisper. What happened to this world? Far away, hidden on a ridge overlooking the forest, cloaked soldiers lowered their viewing scopes. One spoke quietly, shaken. That wasn't a Titan. Another replied, voice sharp, controlled. Then we report it as an unknown threat. Back in the clearing, Silver slowly stood. Behind him, deep beneath layers of earth and stone and memory, something ancient stirred. Something connected to paths beyond time. And as Silver took a single step forward, the echo returned, clearer this time, inside his mind, distorted, broken, but unmistakably, a word. Found. Silver's eyes widened. If something in this world just recognized Silver, what else already knows he's here? The forest was too quiet. Silver moved carefully between massive tree roots, each step measured, controlled, conserving what little psychic energy he could still access. The morning light barely pierced the canopy, turning the world into a green-tinted haze of shadows and mist. But it wasn't the silence that unsettled him. It was the feeling that time itself was out of rhythm. Silver pressed 2 fingers against his temple, breathing slowly. Focus. Stabilize. Read. Temporal flow. Normally, timeline energy felt like currents in an ocean. Predictable, directional, stable. But here, it felt like shattered glass floating in water. Fragments drifting without order. And then, pain exploded behind his eyes. He dropped to one knee. The forest vanished. He stood in a city he didn't recognize. Buildings burned under an orange sky. Smoke pillars stretched into the stratosphere. The ground trembled with rhythmic impacts. Slow, massive, unstoppable. Titans marched, but not like the ones he saw earlier. These were larger, different. Some had hardened armor plating across their bodies. Others moved with terrifying coordination, not mindless hunger. And above them, Silver's breath caught. Winged Titans. Massive skeletal wings stretched across the sky, carrying giant forms that screamed across the air like living war machines. Their shadows swallowed entire city blocks as they passed. Human weapons fired upward. Missiles, artillery, energy cannons. It didn't matter. The Titans kept moving. Silver turned slowly. Mountains of bodies filled the streets. Not just soldiers. Civilians. Children. Entire populations erased. A voice echoed somewhere. Distant. Layered. Distorted by time itself. This is the end. Silver reached forward instinctively. No. This is wrong. This isn't supposed to happen. The vision shattered. He slammed back into reality, coughing violently as cold forest air filled his lungs. His hands shook as he stared at them. That wasn't just possible future. That was a dominant outcome. He stood slowly, forcing his breathing steady. If this world continues on this path, humanity ends. The realization sat heavy in his chest. But something else disturbed him more. The timeline damage wasn't natural. It felt redirected, like history here had been pushed toward catastrophe. Silver's jaw tightened. Someone caused this. A branch snapped somewhere behind him. Silver turned instantly, raising one hand, psychic energy flickering defensively. Nothing. Just trees. But his instincts didn't relax. High above, nearly invisible against the canopy, several figures crouched silently on tree branches, wearing green cloaks and maneuver gear. One of them lowered her binoculars slightly, whispering. He reacted before we made sound. Another voice answered quietly. Not human reflexes. The squad leader remained silent, watching Silver with intense focus. Below, Silver moved again. Slower now, deliberately unpredictable, as if he knew eyes were on him but couldn't pinpoint where. His mind raced. If this was a branching disaster timeline, then his arrival might have made it worse. Or it might be the reason he was pulled here in the first place. Silver stopped walking. He looked up at the thin strip of sky visible through the trees. I don't know who you are, he said quietly. Not to anyone specific, but to the timeline itself. But if you're the reason this world ends, his fists clenched. I'll stop you. The wind picked up slightly, rustling leaves around him. And deep inside his mind, fragments of the vision lingered. Burning oceans, falling walls, and something else. Someone else. A figure, standing at the peak of a mountain made entirely of corpses. Silver's breath hitched. He squeezed his eyes shut, and the vision forced itself back. Smoke filled the air. Steam rose from the ground in endless waves. The sky glowed red like a dying sun, and there, silhouetted against the burning horizon, a boy. Teenage, human, blood covering his clothes and face, eyes wide with rage and grief and something far worse, resolve. Below him stretched an ocean of bodies. Humans, titans, soldiers, civilians, everyone. The boy screamed at the sky, a sound so full of hatred and pain it felt like it cracked reality itself. Silver tried to see his face clearly. The vision fractured again. Silver staggered backward into a tree, breathing hard. Who are you? High above, the watching soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. He looks scared, one whispered. The leader's voice came low and firm. Or determined. Below them, Silver slowly straightened. His eyes hardened. I don't know who triggers this future, he said quietly. But I'll find them. His voice dropped. And I'll stop them. Before this world reaches that point. For the first time since arriving, his psychic aura flickered stronger. Unstable, but burning with purpose. But as he turned to keep moving, the lingering echo of the vision sharpened. And for a split second, the boy under the mountain of corpses turned, looking directly at him. Silver's eyes widened, because the expression on that boy's face wasn't victory. It wasn't madness. It was certainty, as if he believed he was saving the world. If the one standing atop humanity's end truly believes he's the hero, then who is Silver really fighting? The forest exploded into motion. Steel cables fired through the trees with sharp metallic cracks. Gas propulsion thundered in short bursts. Cloaked figures dropped from the canopy like predators finally committing to the hunt. Silver barely had time to turn before something wrapped around his arms. Reinforced wire tightened instantly. He reacted on instinct. Blue psychic energy flared around him, lifting him half a meter off the ground. But the energy flickered violently, unstable. His grip on the wires barely loosened before another cable wrapped around his legs, yanking him down hard. He hit the forest floor, air punching out of his lungs. Boots landed around him, blades drawn, precise, silent, professional. Silver coughed, trying to push himself up. Relax, a calm, cold voice said. Or I cut something important. Silver looked up. Short black hair, gray eyes, expression completely unreadable. The man held twin blades casually. but his stance screamed lethal efficiency. Silver's mind raced. Not military tech I recognize, but combat discipline is extreme. Another soldier stepped forward, clearly tense. Captain, did you see that earlier? He lifted a Titan's head without touching it. I saw, the captain replied flatly. His gaze never left Silver. Silver slowly raised his hands. I'm not your enemy, he said carefully. The captain crouched in front of him. Everyone says that. A long pause. Then, what are you? Silver hesitated. And that was enough. The captain's eyes narrowed slightly. Not from around here, he said quietly. Silver swallowed. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me. Silver shook his head. I can't. Not won't. Can't. The difference didn't escape the captain. Around them, other squad members exchanged uneasy glances. One whispered, could he be Titan experimentation? Another answered, or Marley tech we haven't seen yet. The word Marley meant nothing to Silver, but the tension behind it did. The captain stood. Bind him properly. We're taking him inside the walls. Silver's heart tightened. Inside the walls. The moment those words registered, something deep inside his mind screamed. A flash. Stone walls stretching higher than mountains. Millions of footsteps shaking the world. Silver's breath hitched. Something inside those walls is connected to the future collapse. He forced his face neutral. The captain noticed. You reacted, he said quietly. Silver stayed silent. The squad secured him fully now. Wrists, legs, torso, anti-mobility. Not cruel, just thorough. As they prepared to move, one soldier muttered, Captain Levi, if he really isn't human. So, Levi. Silver filed the name away. Levi leaned slightly closer to Silver, voice low enough only he could hear. If you try anything, I won't hesitate. There was no threat in his tone, just fact. Silver believed him instantly. Hours later, as they approached the outer wall gates, Silver felt it again, that wrongness. Not just timeline distortion. Something older, deeper, like a pressure sitting under reality itself. His head throbbed. This place. This is where it starts. As they entered the gate tunnel, Silver's vision blurred. Stone. Darkness. Echoing footsteps. And then, a shockwave slammed through his mind. Not physical. Psychic. Raw emotion. Rage. Grief. Hatred. Freedom. Silver gasped, nearly collapsing despite the restraints. Levi grabbed his collar instantly, keeping him upright. What is it? Silver couldn't answer. Because somewhere, deeper inside the walls, someone else had felt it too. Inside a military barracks, a young man froze mid-step. His breath caught violently. Pain shot through his skull, like lightning. Images flashed behind his eyes. A flash of blue light. Floating. Foreign. Wrong. The young man dropped to one knee, gripping his head. What? Is that? His pulse hammered faster. Anger rose. Not logical. Instinctual. Territorial. Like something had entered his world. His voice came out strained, almost feral. Where is it? Nearby soldiers turned in alarm. Aaron, what's wrong? Aaron Yeager barely heard them. Because for a split second, he felt eyes looking back at him. Back at the gate tunnel, Silver collapsed fully to his knees now. Levi signaled the squad to halt. Silver whispered, barely audible. He felt me. Levi's eyes sharpened. Who? Silver shook his head. But inside, he knew. The boy from the vision. The one standing on the mountain of corpses. He was here. Alive. And connected to whatever force was warping this timeline. Silver's hands trembled inside the restraints. If he's the trigger point, then getting close to him might make everything worse. Or it might be the only way to stop the future from happening. Levi studied Silver's expression. Fear mixed with resolve. Not the look of a spy, not the look of a Titan shifter. Something else. Something Levi couldn't categorize. And that made it worse. Far away, inside the barracks, Aaron slammed his fist into the floor, breathing like he'd just survived drowning. "Something's here," he whispered. "And I hate it." If Aaron's instincts are already rejecting Silver's existence, what happens when they finally meet face to face? The alarm bells didn't ring. They screamed. The sound tore through the streets like a living thing. Metallic, frantic, relentless. Soldiers ran across rooftops. Civilians flooded alleyways. Smoke rose near the outer district gate, thick and violent. Silver stood in the middle of a stone street, wrists finally freed but still under guard, when the first tremor hit. The ground shook once, then again. Then the wall cannons fired. His chest tightened. "They're here!" A soldier shouted from above, voice cracking with urgency. "Titans! Breaching the outer district!" Chaos erupted instantly. Levi didn't waste a second. "You," he said sharply to Silver, tossing him a maneuver harness. "If you can fight, you fight. If you try to run..." "I won't," Silver cut in, already strapping the gear on awkwardly. "If civilians are involved, I help." Levi studied him for half a second, then fired his cables and vanished into the sky. Silver followed slower, clumsier, using a mix of gear propulsion and short telekinetic bursts to stabilize himself. The sight beyond the rooftops made his stomach drop. Titans flooded through a shattered gate. Dozens. Some slow and lumbering, others disturbingly fast. Cannons blasted chunks from their bodies. They kept moving. Silver landed beside a group of scouts preparing an evacuation line. One of them. Black hair, red scarf, eyes like sharpened steel. Glanced at him once, quickly assessing. "You're the unknown," she said calmly. Silver nodded once. Silver. She didn't offer her name back, but she didn't attack either. Instead, she pointed forward. "Then help." A Titan burst through a row of houses, grabbing blindly. Silver reacted instantly. He thrust both hands forward. Psychic energy exploded outward, slamming the Titan sideways through two buildings. Dust filled the street. For half a second, hope sparked in nearby soldiers' eyes. Then, the Titan began regenerating. Flesh crawled back over exposed bone like melting wax in reverse. Silver's expression hardened. "You've got to be kidding me." More Titans pushed in. Numbers. Endless numbers. Silver lifted chunks of stone debris, hurling them like artillery. Titans fell, limbs shattered. But none of them stayed down. "Neck!" a soldier shouted. "Sever the nape!" Silver adjusted instantly, grabbing a Titan mid-charge and twisting it backward, trying to expose the weak point. The Titan thrashed violently, breaking his telekinetic grip. Silver staggered mid-air. Power drain. Fast. Below, civilians screamed as two smaller Titans broke through an alley. Silver dropped instantly, landing between them and a trapped group of families. The Titans lunged. Silver screamed, forcing more power than his body wanted to release. Blue energy erupted outward, lifting both Titans off the ground and slamming them into opposite buildings. The street cracked beneath him. Windows shattered across the district. For a moment, everything stopped. Then Silver dropped to one knee, vision swimming. Too much. Too fast. Across the rooftops, Levy watched. "He's pushing past his limits," he muttered. Then he moved. One blur of motion later, Levi sliced through one Titan's nape cleanly while it was still pinned by Silver's weakened telekinesis. He landed beside Silver. "You planning to kill yourself saving strangers?" Levi said flatly. Silver coughed, trying to stand. "If I don't, they die." Levi didn't respond, but he didn't disagree either. Across the battlefield, the girl with the red scarf. Mikasa watched Silver closely while cutting down another Titan with surgical precision. Not reckless, not power hungry. Protective, calculated, like someone fighting for a future, not just survival. She spoke quietly into comm range. He's not like them. No one asked who them meant. The battle intensified. Smoke, screams, steam rising from fallen Titans. Silver forced himself back into the air, grabbing falling debris to shield retreating civilians from another charging Titan. His power flickered violently now, unstable, surging with emotional spikes. And deep inside his mind, the future vision pulsed harder. Mountains of corpses, burning skies, extinction. I won't let it happen, he shouted, forcing another massive telekinetic wave that sent 3 Titans crashing backward. The effort nearly blacked him out. Then, something changed. One Titan stopped. Completely. Stood in the middle of chaos, ignoring soldiers, ignoring civilians, ignoring gunfire. Slowly, it turned its head and locked eyes with Silver. The world seemed to narrow. The Titan's expression shifted. Not hunger, focus, recognition. Silver's heart stopped. Not again. The Titan took one step forward. Past fleeing civilians. Past attacking scouts. Toward him. Only him. Behind him, Levy noticed instantly. Why is that one ignoring everyone else? The Titan began moving faster now. Direct line. Straight at Silver. And Silver felt it. That same distorted mental echo from before. Stronger. Clearer. You. Silver's hands trembled. What do you want from me? The Titan broke into a full sprint. Straight through the battlefield. Straight toward him. Why would a mindless Titan ignore an entire battlefield just to reach Silver? The battlefield noise faded into a distant roar. Silver hovered barely a meter above the cracked stone street, breathing hard, eyes locked on the Titan, sprinting directly toward him. It didn't look different at first glance. Same distorted smile, same exposed teeth, same stretched skin and hollow eyes. But it moved with purpose, not random hunger, not chaotic aggression, intent. The ground trembled with every step it took. Debris jumping in small, violent bursts as it closed the distance. Around it, scouts cut down other Titans. Cannons fired. Civilians screamed. The abnormal Titan ignored all of it. It only saw him. Silver forced his shaking hands forward. Then let's test something, he whispered. Blue telekinetic energy exploded outward, wrapping around the Titan's torso and limbs mid-charge. The Titan staggered, but didn't stop. Silver's eyes widened. It pushed forward, step by step, like it was walking through deep water instead of being held by invisible force. That's not possible. Silver poured more power into the hold, veins in his arms tightening as psychic light flared brighter. The Titan slowed. Its skin began tearing slightly under the pressure. But then, it leaned forward and roared, and Silver's telekinetic field shattered outward in a violent psychic backlash. He was thrown backward through a rooftop, crashing through tiles and wood beams before slamming into an attic floor. Dust filled his lungs. His ears rang. Adaptive resistance, he coughed. They can adjust. Below, the abnormal Titan didn't even pause. It simply changed direction. Toward him. Across the district, standing on a rooftop, Eren Yeager watched. Steam rose faintly from his skin. Not transformation, not fully, but close enough to feel it building. His eyes stayed locked on Silver as the foreign fighter burst back out through the building roof, barely regaining aerial balance. Something twisted inside Eren's chest. Recognition. Not memory. Not knowledge. But instinct. Like seeing something that shouldn't exist. Somehow did. Eren gripped the rooftop edge, teeth grinding. Who the hell are you? Mikasa landed beside him silently. Focus, she said. The abnormal is targeting him. That gives us an opening. But Eren didn't move immediately, because part of him didn't want that Titan to die yet. Part of him wanted to see what happened next. Back in the street airspace, Silver wiped blood from the corner of his mouth. Okay, he muttered. No brute force. Not here. He watched the Titan carefully now. How it moved. How it adjusted posture before pushing through psychic pressure. How its eyes never lost focus. It's learning. Or worse, something is guiding it. Silver landed lightly on a broken bell tower ledge, forcing himself to slow his breathing. Think! Don't overpower! The Titan charged again, leaping over collapsed buildings with terrifying speed. Silver didn't grab it directly this time. Instead, he yanked street debris into its path, forcing it to crash through stone walls, lose balance, redirect momentum. It worked. Not perfectly, but enough to slow it. Levi cut across its blind spot, slicing deep into its shoulder to destabilize it further. But even Levi hesitated slightly mid-air. It's ignoring lethal threats, he muttered. That's not normal behavior. The Titan recovered faster than expected, and turned again. Still Silver. Always Silver. Silver jumped backward, guiding falling rubble to pin the Titan's legs for a moment. Then he noticed something. The Titan didn't immediately struggle. It adjusted its breathing pattern, like it was analyzing the force holding it. Silver's stomach dropped. No. If Titans could adapt mid-combat, then this world's survival math changed completely. Brute strength wouldn't win. Technology wouldn't win. Even his future knowledge might not win. Silver's voice dropped to a whisper. This world doesn't need a hero with power. He clenched his fists. It needs someone who understands it. The Titan burst free again, charging straight at him with renewed speed. Silver braced, ready to dodge. Then the Titan slowed, just before reaching him, close enough that Silver could see individual skin tears regenerating across its face. Its eyes locked onto his, and for a fraction of a second, the smile faded. Its mouth twitched, not random muscle spasm, deliberate. Silver felt the psychic echo slam into him again. Stronger, clearer, broken, but trying. You are wrong. Silver's breath caught. Wrong about what? Titan's jaw trembled, and for one horrifying moment, its eyes focused with something almost like thought. Then it roared again, full, mindless rage, and lunged. Silver barely dodged, launching himself skyward with a desperate telekinetic burst. Below him, Levi shouted orders. Mikasa repositioned. Cannons reloaded. But Silver didn't hear any of it, because one realization had rooted deep into his chest. If Titans could adapt, if they could learn, then whatever caused the future extinction wasn't just raw destruction. It was evolution. And as he looked down at the abnormal Titan, still searching for him through battlefield chaos, he felt something far worse than fear. He felt recognition, like this creature was sent to find him. If a Titan just tried to communicate, who or what is teaching them to think? By nightfall, the story had already changed 3 times. In the refugee districts, survivors whispered about a spirit that lifted Titans into the air. In the merchant quarters, it became a weapon the military had been hiding. Inside military circles, it was something worse. An unknown variable. Silver sat alone in a dim stone holding room beneath a Survey Corps outpost. Wrists restrained again. Not brutally, but firmly enough to remind him he was not trusted. Torchlight flickered across the walls, casting long shadows that shifted like moving bars. Above him, he could hear muffled arguments. Not about Titans. About him. You saw what it did, one voice said sharply. It's not human. Another answered, calmer but firm. It fought to protect civilians. That matters. And if it turns? If it's some new enemy tactic? Silver leaned his head back against the cold stone. So this was humanity inside the walls. Not united, not clean, not heroic. Just scared, and fear made people dangerous. Footsteps approached. The door opened. Levi stepped inside, closing it behind him. For a long moment, he just stood there, arms crossed, studying Silver like a problem that refused to solve itself. You made quite an impression, Levi said finally. Silver gave a weak half smile. I'm guessing that's not good. Depends who you ask. Levi stepped closer, stopping just outside arm's reach. Military police want you transferred to them. Immediately. Silver's chest tightened. And you? Levi didn't answer right away. The Survey Corps wants to understand what you are before anyone decides what to do with you. Silver nodded slowly. Study me, he said quietly. That's better than killing me. Levi's eyes narrowed slightly. You say that like you've been here before. Silver didn't answer. Because in a way, he had. Different worlds. Same fear. Same politics. Same desperation disguised as authority. Levi crouched slightly, voice lowering. You knew that Titan was targeting you. Silver closed his eyes briefly. Yes. Why? I don't know. Not entirely a lie. Levi stood again. I don't like unknowns. Silver met his gaze directly. I don't like this future. The words hung between them. Levi studied him for another long moment. Then turned toward the door. Get some rest, he said flatly. You'll need it. The door shut. But Silver didn't relax, because the pressure under the walls felt stronger now, like something below, or behind, or inside this society, was pushing events toward that catastrophic future. And now, he could feel something else. Fear. Not just civilian fear. Institutional fear. Across the city, inside polished marble halls lit by golden chandeliers, a different conversation unfolded. Men in expensive clothing sat around a long table, wine glasses untouched. Floating, without gear? Yes. And repelled multiple Titans? Yes. And the Survey Corps wants to keep it? A long silence followed. Then, one of the nobles spoke quietly. If this creature exists outside the authority of the crown, it is a threat. Another nodded slowly. Or an opportunity. The first noble leaned forward slightly. Either way, it cannot remain under Survey Corps protection. A servant stood silently near the door, listening, memorizing, preparing to deliver the message. Back in the holding chamber, Silver sat cross-legged now, focusing on stabilizing his psychic energy. But his thoughts kept drifting. Not to Titans. Not to battles. To humans, factions, control, secrecy. If humanity here was divided, then maybe the extinction future wasn't just Titans winning. Maybe humanity helped destroy itself. Silver exhaled slowly. I need to see everything, he whispered. Not just the battlefield. Footsteps passed in the hall outside. Urgent. Tense. Political. And far away. Deep inside another district. Aaron sat alone in darkness, staring at his hands, still feeling that foreign presence in his world. Still feeling anger he didn't fully understand. Why do I feel like, he muttered quietly, like he's connected to something I haven't seen yet? Near midnight, Levi returned to the command room. A sealed letter waited on the table. Royal wax. Official. He broke it open, reading silently. His jaw tightened. Because it wasn't a request. It was an order disguised as one. Transfer the subject to noble custody for security review. Levi folded the paper slowly, then burned it over a candle. But he already knew what this meant. They wouldn't stop asking. They wouldn't stop pushing. And eventually, they would stop asking entirely. Back in his cell, Silver suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. Not psychic, not Titan-related, political, human, predatory, and somewhere, deep in the city's highest towers, powerful men were already deciding his fate. If the nobles want Silver handed over, what do they know about him that even the scouts don't? The first thing Silver noticed wasn't the equipment. It was the smell. Ink, heated metal, chemicals, old paper, burnt oil. The underground research chamber buzzed with low mechanical hums and flickering lantern light. Strange devices lined the stone walls. Pressure gauges, blood sample racks, preserved Titan tissue sealed in glass containers. And in the center of it all, a woman pacing in rapid circles, muttering to herself while scribbling notes mid-walk. She stopped instantly when Silver entered under guard. Her eyes lit up like someone who had just found a missing piece of the universe. "So, you're the floating one." Silver blinked. "Hi." She rushed forward, fast enough that the guards instinctively tensed. But she stopped just short of touching him, practically vibrating with excitement. "I'm Hang," she said, "and you are the most interesting biological anomaly I've ever seen." Silver couldn't help a small, confused smile. "That's weirdly nice." Levi stood against the far wall, arms crossed. "Don't get comfortable," he said. "This is still an evaluation." Hang barely waved him off. Yes. Security, danger, unknown existential threat. I get it." She turned back to Silver instantly. "Now, when you lifted that Titan earlier, what did it feel like?" Silver hesitated. Not because he didn't want to answer, but because no one had ever asked him that before. "Heavy," he said finally. "But not physically. More like resistance. Like pushing against something that didn't belong in normal reality." Hangy froze, then slowly smiled. "Oh, that's fascinating." She gestured him toward a testing platform. Not restraints, just marked floor circles and measuring devices. "We've studied Titan energy signatures for years," she said quickly, adjusting lenses over her eyes. "Heat output, regeneration patterns, nerve reactivation delays. But you..." She turned toward him, eyes sharp now. "You don't match any of it." Silver flexed his fingers slowly, letting a faint blue glow form around them. "It's not from here," he said quietly. Hanga nodded immediately. "Yes, I think so too." Levi shifted slightly, but said nothing. Hanga circled Silver slowly, scanning readings. "Your energy fluctuates with emotional spikes," she said. "But not like Titan rage, more like reality strain." Silver swallowed. "That's actually not far off." Hang looked genuinely thrilled. "Extra-dimensional energy," she whispered. "Not Titan-based, not biological mutation, not mechanical." She looked back at him. "You might literally be powered by something outside this universe." Silver let out a slow breath. "Yeah, that sounds about right." Levi finally spoke. "Or he's lying." Hang didn't even turn around. "He's not." Levi's tone hardened slightly. "You don't know that." Hang turned now, calm but firm. "I know patterns, and he doesn't fit any known threat model." Levi's eyes shifted back to Silver. "That doesn't make him safe." Silver spoke before either could escalate. "I don't need you to trust me," he said quietly. "I just need time." The room went quiet, because that sounded less like a request, and more like someone racing against something inevitable. Hours passed in testing. Controlled telekinetic lifts, reaction delay measurements, emotional spike monitoring, and slowly, the atmosphere changed. Less interrogation, More collaboration. At one point, Hang handed Silver a mug of something bitter and steaming. For energy stabilization, she said casually. Silver took it. You don't treat me like a weapon. Hang shrugged. You saved civilians. That makes you a person first. Silver stared into the mug. For the first time since arriving in this world, he didn't feel like a timeline repair tool. He felt like someone who could matter here. Not just save it, live in it. Protect specific people. Not just abstract humanity. And that realization scared him more than Titans ever could. Across the room, Levi watched silently. Because emotional attachments made soldiers stronger, but they also made them break. Eventually. Later, as testing wrapped, Hang leaned against the desk, voice quieter now. There's something else, she said. Silver looked up. I've been comparing battle reports. Hang tapped a notebook. The abnormal Titan. The one targeting you. Silver's stomach tightened. Yes? Hang's voice dropped. It didn't just ignore others. She met his eyes directly. It tracked you. Silver's chest felt suddenly heavy. Hang continued. If your energy is extra-dimensional, and Titans originate from a source we still don't fully understand. She exhaled slowly. Then it's possible Titans don't just see you as prey. Silver whispered, then what? Hang's answer came almost too quietly. They might see you as a threat to their origin. The room felt colder. Silver's mind flashed to the future visions again. Extinction. Not just of humans. Of everything. If Titans sensed him as something that could end them, then this wasn't random. This was systemic. And somewhere out there, something older than Titans might already know he was here. Levi stepped forward finally. If that's true, he said quietly, then every Titan outside those walls might eventually come looking for him. Silver closed his eyes. Not fear. Not panic. Just acceptance. Then he looked up again. Then we make sure I'm ready. If Titans see Silver as a threat to their very origin, what happens when the source of Titans finally notices him? The room was empty, or at least it seemed so. Silver entered cautiously, his restrained energy simmering just below the surface. The walls of the old training hall creaked under a faint wind, and shadows stretched long under the fading light from a single high window. Aaron was already there, leaning against the wall, arms crossed, eyes scanning the floor with that distant intensity that had always unnerved anyone who dared approach him. When he finally looked up, his gaze locked on Silver with a mixture of suspicion and raw, unreadable emotion. You're not human, Aaron said quietly. Not an accusation, not a question, just fact. No, Silver replied evenly, stepping closer. And you're not the only one who feels like this world is broken. Aaron's jaw tightened. Broken? You think you understand this world after dropping in from wherever you came from? His voice carried anger, disbelief, and a hint of fear he would never admit aloud. I don't understand it completely, Silver said, holding his hands up slightly. But I see where it's going. Aaron's eyes narrowed. And what? You're some kind of savior? A time traveler come to fix things? Don't call me naive. I've lived with this chaos. I survive it. I don't need someone telling me what's supposed to happen. Silver stepped closer, the blue aura around his hands flaring faintly in the dim light. It's not about belief. It's about consequence. This world, it doesn't just end. It burns. Humanity collapses. Titans destroy everything. If we don't act, Aaron laughed, bitter and harsh. If we don't act? You mean if you don't act? I've been fighting my whole life. I've made choices. I've survived. Destiny. Destiny isn't something that exists. It's a lie people tell themselves to sleep at night. Silver's eyes softened for the briefest moment. I used to believe that too, that everything was choice. But I've seen the future. And sometimes, choice isn't enough. The room fell silent for a moment. Only the wind outside and distant echoes of soldiers training filled the space. Aaron's voice dropped, almost a whisper. You've seen the future? What do you know about the future of me? Silver's heart tightened. He didn't need to answer with words. The visions had shown him. Flames and smoke. Mountains of corpses. Titans swarming like locusts. And atop it all, Aaron, standing alone, eyes blazing, hands shaking, power uncontrolled, carrying the weight of annihilation on his shoulders. Silver took a careful step closer, voice firm but low. You have potential. Massive potential. I've seen what you can do if you don't control it. And it scares me. Aaron's hands flexed involuntarily. Control. Power. You talk as if I'm a danger to everyone else. Maybe I am. Maybe this world needs to burn before it can live again. I've felt it. Every day since I was a child. Nothing anyone says changes that. Silver shook his head slowly. It doesn't have to. But left unchecked, it will destroy more than just the walls. I can't stop it alone. You can't either. But together, maybe we can steer it. Aaron's eyes flared, filled with anger, disbelief, and something almost like curiosity. Together, you, a stranger from another world? I can't trust that. And neither can anyone else. Silver's gaze didn't waver. I don't expect trust, not yet. But I can show you the choices that lead to survival, and the ones that lead to ruin. For a moment, they just stared. Opposite philosophies, opposite experiences, a collision of ideologies. Freedom versus responsibility. The boy who rejected destiny versus the one who knew it in impossible detail. Then Silver's eyes flickered with that brief, silent blue light. There's something else, he said softly. When I saw the apocalypse, you were there, leading it. Not as a victim, but as the catalyst. Aaron's eyes widened slightly. Not in fear, not yet, but in recognition. What do you mean? He asked, voice tight. Silver's tone was calm, deliberate. If the future I've seen happens, you'll be the one who decides whether humanity survives or perishes. Every choice you make carries that weight. And I don't know if I can stop it. Not without you. Aaron swallowed hard, his fists clenched, shaking with both anger and something deeper, something primal. And if you're wrong, Silver's eyes met his, steady and unwavering. Then at least we tried. But if I'm right, you can't afford to ignore this. Not anymore. The wind outside stirred, rattling the windows. Shadows shifted. For a heartbeat, both of them were silent. Two forces poised on the edge of collision. One child of this world, filled with uncontrolled rage and potential. One visitor from tomorrow, carrying impossible knowledge and the burden of foresight. And then Silver's vision flashed again. The mountain of corpses. Fire in the sky. Titans moving like storm clouds. And at the apex, Aaron, alone, screaming, eyes blazing with uncontrollable energy. Silver's breath caught. That's you. Aaron staggered back instinctively, fear creeping into his expression for the first time. What are you saying? Silver's voice lowered, urgent and heavy. If that future comes, it's because you don't see what you carry inside you. And I have to make sure it never happens. The room went deathly silent. Only the distant sounds of the city beyond the walls intruded. And Silver's heart sank, because deep down, he knew this wasn't a warning he could deliver lightly. It was a choice. One Aaron might refuse to make. As Silver's visions flare again, showing Aaron atop a mountain of corpses, the boy's scream echoes in his mind. What happens if Aaron sees that vision first and chooses the path of destruction? Far beyond the walls, across the turbulent ocean, the towers of Liberio gleamed under a cold morning sun. Inside the command chambers of Marley, officers moved with precise, rehearsed urgency. Reports had arrived overnight. Intercepted whispers, coded transmissions, and scattered intelligence from Eldian spies. Telekinetic soldier, one officer said aloud, raising an eyebrow. You mean a single combatant who can lift titans? Like a human weapon? Yes, another replied, voice clipped and cold. Sightings confirm. Airborne, precise, unfamiliar energy signature. Witnesses report destruction rivaling shifters, but with no titan form. The room grew tense. Maps spread across the table showed the walls, the surrounding districts, and troop positions. Pins marked the sightings. Red ink indicated casualties and collateral damage. Every mark pulsed with the faint, unspoken dread that Marley intelligence had learned to recognize. Something unprecedented was brewing inside enemy territory. Are you saying this anomaly threatens Eldia from within? A commander asked, voice shaking slightly. Or from outside? The lead strategist leaned forward, tapping the map. We don't know, but if this entity exists, it can disrupt everything. The Survey Corps' reports are incomplete. Eyewitnesses claim it operates without hesitation, ignoring standard combat rules. This is not a Titan shifter. This is something else entirely. Whispers rippled through the chamber. A single word hung in the air. Unknown. Unknown, the general said, voice low and deliberate. And unknowns are threats we cannot tolerate. I want options. The discussion split into factions. Some advocated capturing Silver alive. To study, reverse engineer, weaponize. The prospect of harnessing such power was intoxicating. Others demanded immediate elimination. Let no foreign anomaly disrupt Marley's plans. No experiments, no curiosity, no risk. A young officer, tasked with drafting countermeasures, piped up. If we act too late, this soldier could turn the tides within the walls before we even arrive. Eldia will strengthen. Survey Corps will adapt. Humanity inside those walls could finally unite against us. The room fell silent. The implication was clear. This single, mysterious soldier was accelerating conflict timelines. Plans Marley had expected to unfold over decades might now collapse in months or weeks. One strategist finally spoke, voice cold and sharp. Then we act before the walls adapt. A covert strike, minimal exposure. One shifter team already trained in infiltration to secure or neutralize. Swift, surgical, no public spectacle. The generals nodded. The decision was made. Marley would not wait. The anomaly could not be ignored, and if it survived contact, it would be studied. If it resisted, it would die. Meanwhile, far above the ocean, reconnaissance ships sliced through the waves, carrying the silent soldiers of war. Titans in human form, shifters trained for infiltration, each with orders clear in their minds. Enter the walls ahead of schedule, neutralize the threat, return with results. The lead officer's gaze lingered on the map. His lips tightened. We underestimated the walls before. Never again. This Silver, he cannot be allowed to exist long enough to change our timeline. Somewhere in that same room, a signal flashed. A coded dispatch from the front lines. The anomaly had been sighted again, airborne, near the forest edge beyond Wal Maria. And with it came the terrifying realization. The soldiers' movements were not random. Every action, every rescue, every intervention had ripples. Ripples that threatened to unravel decades of Marley's calculated oppression, planned expansion, and secret manipulations. The strategists shifted uncomfortably. Unlike Titans, unlike Eldian rebels, this force operated on logic and intent, but from a world they could not understand. The lead general leaned back, voice a low growl. Prepare the shifters, deploy immediately, and mark this, soldier. Track every move, Nothing happens by chance. He may be a single individual, but his presence changes everything. The walls will no longer be our slow, predictable opponent. He accelerates the game, and we must be faster. The officers nodded, understanding the gravity of the order. Everything depended on speed, precision, and control. Failure was unthinkable. Across the sea, under the golden morning light, Marley began a quiet mobilization. Invisible hands prepared to strike, agents trained to blend, titans ready to unleash controlled chaos. All to intercept a single being whose origin they did not understand. Silver, oblivious to the plans forming across the water, concentrated on stabilizing his energy. Yet somewhere in the back of his mind, he felt it. A subtle disturbance, something beyond the immediate battlefield, something that pressed against the very fabric of his senses. A chill ran down his spine. The world outside the walls was watching, and what watched was patient, ruthless, and determined. As Marley prepares to send its shifter team early, will Silver face an enemy who already knows how to exploit his every weakness, before he even realizes the danger approaching from across the sea? The morning air outside Wall Rose was thick with smoke and the metallic tang of blood. The alarm bells had rung hours ago, piercing the fragile calm of the town. Titans had breached the outer perimeter, and panic had swept through the streets like wildfire. Civilians ran blindly, seeking shelter wherever they could find it. Horses bolted, carts overturned, and the cries of the innocent blended with the monstrous roars of the Titans, echoing against stone walls. Silver hovered above the chaos, his hands glowing faintly blue as his psychic energy pulsed. Every motion was deliberate, every lift and push measured against the Titan's relentless approach. Unlike before, these creatures weren't solitary, aimless targets. They moved in coordinated waves, their grotesque instincts sharpening in the presence of humans. And now, with Silver among them, something had shifted. He extended his powers outward, telekinetically hurling debris, carts, even entire fragments of buildings to block Titans' paths. A Titan lunged at a group of scouts, jaws snapping inches from their necks. Silver twisted midair, a precise flick of his wrist sending it crashing backward into a collapsed wall. Dust and rubble rained down. The scouts watched from above, eyes wide, mouths agape. Mikas's expression was tense, but intrigued, as if seeing a new type of weapon. Not a Raunsia Titan, not a shifter, but something entirely unpredictable. Armin scribbled notes furiously in his journal, muttering about force vectors and psychic momentum, while Jean shouted orders, trying to coordinate retreat and counterattack. And through it all, Levi remained still, arms crossed, gaze calculating. Not impressed, not yet. Silver's breaths came rapid, shallow. He could feel his energy draining, the psychic strain growing heavier with every move. Titans regenerated, adapted, and continued advancing. For the first time in days, he realized his limitations. Telekinesis wasn't infinite. Strength alone wouldn't save this day. A massive Titan, its skin marred and scarred, advanced directly toward a cluster of scouts who were trapped in a narrow alley. Silver's hands shot forward, lifting debris and hurling the creature aside, but it barely staggered. His muscles screamed in protest, energy flickering like a candle in wind. Levi barked from the rooftops. "Silver, watch your limits. You're not a Titan." "I know," Silver shouted back, teeth clenched. "But I can't let them die." The scout division hesitated for a fraction of a second, long enough for the Titan to rear back and strike it again. And then Silver unleashed every ounce of power he had left. Debris, stone, even the very air seemed to bend, forming a psychic barrier that slammed the Titan backward, sending it tumbling into the ground with a deafening crash. The other Titans froze, as if sensing a force they couldn't comprehend. For a moment, the battlefield fell into silence. Even the scouts held their breath. The Titans, usually unflinching in the face of humans, hesitated. Their movements became jerky, cautious, Fear, primal, alien, and raw, radiated outward from Silver's exertion. He had become more than a human, more than a weapon. He had become something that Titans instinctively feared. But the triumph was short-lived. Silver's knees buckled, his chest burned, lungs rasping. Every cell in his body screamed in exhaustion. He collapsed to the ground, the psychic aura flickering and dimming. Scouts rushed to his side, supporting him as he struggled to breathe. Mikasa knelt beside him, eyes wide with concern. He saved us all, she whispered. Levi didn't move. He studied Silver as if weighing the cost of every future battle. You're not invincible, he muttered. Silver shook his head weakly, lips parting to speak. But then something cut through the cacophony of Titan's groans, the scouts' murmurs, and the crumbling cityscape. A voice, not spoken aloud, not from any human lips. You should not exist here. The words reverberated inside his mind, cold and impossibly sharp. They weren't carried by sound. They were thrust directly into his consciousness. The aura around him flickered violently, a warning in psychic form. Silver's eyes shot open. Every instinct screamed at him that this was more than a Titan, more than a threat he had faced before. Something beyond comprehension had recognized his presence, and it had judged him. Mikasa noticed the change instantly, reaching to steady him. Silver, what is it? He didn't answer immediately. His senses expanded, trying to locate the source, and failing. This was no ordinary enemy. This was something deeper, something ancient, something aware of his existence in a way that Titans never could be. Even Levi's lips twitched, the tiniest hint of unease crossing his otherwise stoic face. Silver's gaze hardened, jaw set. It knows I'm here, he said quietly, and it doesn't want me to be. The scouts exchanged anxious glances. A new tension had settled over them, heavier than any Titan attack. The battlefield wasn't just around them. It was inside Silver's mind, and it was coming. Above the rubble-strewn streets, Titans hesitated. Scouts caught their breath, and Silver collapsed, drained, but aware that survival alone would no longer be enough. If a force beyond the Titans has marked Silver as an anomaly that should not exist, what is waiting for him? And the scouts, the next time he opens his eyes? Silver hovered above the rubble-strewn village, the wind tugging at his quills and the faint blue aura of his psychic energy crackling like static around him. Smoke rose in twisting columns from partially collapsed buildings, and the cries of the dying were a constant, haunting rhythm below. Every instinct screamed at him to intervene, to reach down and pull every soul from danger. Every fiber of his being urged him to save them. But the visions had shown him otherwise. Not everyone could survive. Not every Titan attack could be undone. Every time he tried to save someone who should have fallen, the ripple through time twisted the outcomes, destabilizing the future he had already witnessed. A small life spared here caused catastrophic loss somewhere else, in ways no one could see yet. Each rescue was a thread tugged too far, each interference a shadow cast across the timeline. He clenched his fists, jaw tight. The blue aura around him pulsed erratically, reacting to the emotional tension thrumming through him. From the broken streets below, a child cried out. A small girl, trapped beneath a beam that threatened to crush her. Her eyes were wide with terror, staring directly up at him. Silver's heart twisted. He wanted to swoop down, lift her from danger in an instant. But the image from the vision returned. The collapse of a city. Thousands dead, because one life had been spared too early. He swallowed, forcing himself to stay still, to resist instinct. Silver! Mikasa's voice called from the street. She was closer now, moving with precision and calm, her eyes flicking between him and the Titans advancing through the alleyways. You can save her. I'll cover you. Silver shook his head. No, he whispered, the word bitter on his tongue. Not this time. If I interfere, It won't just be her life. It'll be hundreds, thousands down the line. But she's right there. You can do it. You can save her. Mikasa's urgency was sharp, cutting through the haze of his hesitation. Silver's quills bristled with tension. The psychic energy surged, just a fraction, enough to lift debris without touching her, but not enough to fully remove her from harm. He realized then, with crushing clarity, that he had to accept that some sacrifices were necessary, that even the strongest, fastest, most powerful beings could not save everyone. He took a deep breath, centering himself. Every moment counted. Every action had a consequence. The world he had landed in was not simple. It was brutal, and it did not forgive interference. As he hovered there, he felt the subtle tremor in the air, the timeline itself quivering like a living thing under stress. Every titan roar below, every collapse of masonry, every scream of fear contributed to the unstable equilibrium he had to maintain. Silver's eyes softened as he made the impossible choice. He would not save the girl. Not this time. Not yet. The timeline demanded it. And then he acted, pulling back, lifting energy only to contain the surrounding titans, not to intervene directly. He felt the moment stretch infinitely, his heart pounding in his chest. The world shifted in a way that made him flinch, and he saw it happen. In the corner of his vision, that small, fragile figure trapped beneath the beam. Silver's stomach dropped as he realized he had misjudged. The beam tilted unexpectedly, the debris shifting with gravity and titan movement. He lunged instinctively, but his powers were already stretched thin. The aura flickered violently, the psychic threads tangling and snapping under strain. He barely managed to slow the descent, but it wasn't enough. The girl's scream echoed, the sound fracturing through his consciousness. And then, she was gone. Silver landed hard on the cracked stone, chest heaving, arms trembling. Levi's piercing gaze was on him immediately, unreadable but intense, analyzing. Mikasa knelt beside the collapsed debris, her expression grim but understanding. They all understood the choice, but seeing it fail so publicly cut deep. Silver's vision clouded with the weight of the loss. His entire body shook, a mixture of exhaustion, frustration, and guilt washing over him. The future was not just a puzzle of actions and outcomes. It was a living, breathing entity, punishing him for interference and inaction alike. For the first time, Silver understood the depth of the burden he carried. Power alone was meaningless without wisdom. Speed alone could not change fate, and good intentions could not prevent the necessary suffering that shaped survival. He swallowed, trying to steady himself. His mind spun with the implications. Every life he saved risked the timeline. Every life he let go risked humanity's conscience. Every decision was a dagger to the heart. And then the whisper came. Not a voice in the world, but inside his head, sharp and cutting. Do not fail again. Silver froze, the echo of the girl's scream still vibrating through him. The timeline did not forgive, and now he knew. Failure wasn't just personal. It was cosmic. He closed his eyes, forcing himself to focus. The scouts looked to him with a mixture of trust, fear, and hope. He could not show weakness. Not yet. Not when every choice, every moment, determined life or death for billions in the future. But the question remained, gnawing at him like ice. If even one necessary sacrifice slipped through his grasp, what catastrophe would follow? Silver had failed his first required sacrifice. But in doing so, had he already set in motion the collapse he sought to prevent? And how far down the timeline would the consequences reach before he could intervene again? The war room inside Walrose was quiet, unnervingly so, save for the soft scratch of pens against paper and the occasional murmur of strategy. Silver hovered near the center, arms crossed, blue aura dim and controlled. Around him, the scouts moved with purposeful energy, mapping out patrols, predicting Titan movement and coordinating civilian evacuation routes. But the focus kept returning to him. Every map pin, every tactical discussion seemed to hinge on a single point. Silver. His abilities were no longer just tools in the fight. They were the linchpin. Scouts whispered about his power with reverence and fear, debating how to best utilize him to tip the scales in humanity's favor. Even Mikasa, who trusted him implicitly, found herself sketching his positioning into her plans before issuing commands. Silver's chest tightened. The air around him felt heavier, charged not with psychic energy, but with expectation. Every glance in his direction carried unspoken questions. Could you save us? Could you end this war? Could you become the ultimate weapon to ensure our survival? I'm not a weapon, Silver said quietly, almost to himself. But the words barely left his lips before Jean spoke, stepping forward, frustration in his tone. Then why do you act like one? Your decisions save lives. Your powers dictate the flow of every battle. We rely on you. If you won't accept it, someone else will. Silver's hands flexed, aura flaring for just a fraction. No, I won't be the solution that everyone else depends on blindly. I won't let myself become humanity's savior, its tyrant masked as hope. That's not why I'm here. Levi's expression was unreadable, eyes sharp as ever. You already are, whether you want it or not. His words cut deeper than any blade. They follow your lead. They adapt because of you. And if you step back, the whole system falls apart. Silver swallowed, feeling the crushing weight of their reliance. Every action he took, every Titan he stopped, reinforced that role. Even his refusal to lead was, paradoxically, guidance. The scout's survival had come to depend on his presence, his judgment, and his restraint. He wasn't just fighting Titans anymore. He was carrying the expectations of an entire force, poised against the walls of annihilation. Hang approached him cautiously, eyes wide but calculating. Silver, your ability to think 3 steps ahead, to anticipate Titan's adaptations, has been invaluable. The cores, they need this, and you're the only one who can provide it. Silver shook his head slowly. And that's exactly the problem. The moment I accept that, I'm no longer an ally. I'm a weapon. And weapons don't choose morality. They obey. I refuse to become someone humanity worships out of fear. Mikasa's voice was firm but soft. We trust you because you care. That's different from being a weapon. Silver looked down at his hands, quills glowing faintly. He knew she was right, but the distinction was thin. Caring could become control. Saving could become dominance. And power, unchecked, had a way of corrupting even the noblest intentions. The unease deepened when a messenger arrived, panting and covered in dust from a collapsed wall sector. The words he carried were brief, yet they struck Silver like a hammer. The government had initiated preliminary discussions to mass-produce soldiers with abilities similar to his. Clones or engineered humans imbued with psychic potential. A secret initiative, hidden behind layers of bureaucracy, driven by fear and desperation. Silver's heart sank. He had anticipated resistance from Titans, from Eren, even from factions within the walls. But not this. Not humanity attempting to replicate him, to manufacture his power without understanding its limits, its consequences, or the burden it carried. What are they thinking? He murmured, voice low. They don't know the cost. They don't understand the strain. They don't see that even one life spared unnecessarily can ripple across the timeline. They want armies, and I'm barely surviving as one. Levy's gaze bore into him. Then stop them before they start. If they succeed, your efforts will be meaningless. They'll create weapons, not heroes, and the cost will be greater than any Titan could inflict. Silver's fists clenched. The walls of the war room felt narrower now, the maps and charts mocking him. His power, his presence, had become both a beacon and a curse. Every action he took was scrutinized, every decision weighted with invisible chains of expectation. He took a slow breath, forcing calm. This was more than strategy or survival. It was the responsibility of choice. To step forward would mean controlling a force that could change humanity forever. To step back could mean letting them destroy themselves in fear and ambition. And across the walls, in government chambers, shrouded in shadow, whispers began of the next generation. Soldiers like him engineered and controlled, unaware of what it meant to bear the weight of destiny. Silver knew one thing with absolute clarity. If humanity succeeded in creating silver-like soldiers, would they inherit his foresight? Or his blindness to consequences? And when the first of them emerged, who would stop them? Or him? Silver stood alone atop the scarred hill beyond Wall Maria, the wind tugging at his quills, his blue aura dim but steady. The battlefield below was littered with debris, titans frozen mid-step, civilians huddled behind fractured barricades, and scouts moving cautiously among the wreckage. But his attention was elsewhere, on the threads of time itself, frayed and tangled like a storm-tossed net. For days he had chased fragments of the future, piecing together visions that burned like fire across his mind. Cities aflame, titans swarming in coordinated assault, humanity's armies tearing one another apart, the world reduced to ash. Until now, he had blamed a single cause, a singular event he could intercept. But the truth, stark and unyielding, revealed itself in full clarity. It wasn't just one disaster. It wasn't a single war, a single titan, a single decision. It was the convergence of forces, the unrelenting evolution of titans, their capacity to adapt to human strategies, combined with the relentless escalation of human conflict. Each act of aggression, each retaliatory strike, each political maneuver magnified the timeline's instability. The apocalypse was not a distant possibility. It was already in motion, a cascading sequence of cause and effect that spiraled toward extinction. Silver clenched his fists, the psychic energy around him thrumming with intensity. His mind raced through the sequences, analyzing probabilities, potential interventions, and critical junctures. But every calculated action brought its own risk. Saving one life might doom hundreds more. Altering one battle might ignite a larger conflict. The paradox of his existence weighed heavily. He could see the catastrophe, but every step to prevent it carried the chance of accelerating it. From behind him, a familiar voice broke the silence. "Silver," Armin called, approaching carefully, eyes reflecting both awe and concern. I've been thinking about your visions. Maybe there's more than one way to approach this. You don't have to accept fate as inevitable. The timeline isn't fixed. It's flexible. Even small interventions could change outcomes without risking everything at once. Silver turned, his gaze meeting Armin's earnest eyes. "Flexible or fragile," he muttered. "Every time I interfere, I create new consequences. Every time I act, I risk the very future I'm trying to preserve. How do I know which path leads to survival? And which leads to annihilation?" Armin stepped closer, voice firm. "Because you're not alone. You've learned to work with the scouts, to anticipate titans, to understand human behavior. The choices you make, they don't have to be perfect. They just have to keep the possibility alive." Silver's aura flickered as he absorbed the words. For the first time, he allowed himself a sliver of hope. Maybe the future wasn't as immutable as he feared. Maybe, with careful planning and deliberate restraint, he could influence the events that led to catastrophe without being crushed by the weight of inevitability. But that hope was fleeting, shattered in an instant as a new vision forced itself into his mind. A battlefield strewn with corpses, fire consuming every structure, titans clashing with humans in violent symmetry. And at the center, unmistakable and horrifying, was himself. Older, battle-worn, quills scorched, and aura flickering erratically. Standing against humanity, wielding his powers not as a savior, but as a judge. Silver stumbled back, breath catching in his throat. "No," he whispered, shaking his head. This can't be real. That's me. Fighting them? Fighting. The people I swore to protect?" Armin's hand rested lightly on his shoulder. "It's a warning," he said softly. "The future isn't set, but it can be influenced. What you see, it's a possibility. One path among many. You have to decide who you want to be. And the consequences of that choice will echo across everything." Silver closed his eyes, the wind tugging at him as he steadied himself. His psychic senses reached outward, tracing threads through time, glimpsing divergent paths. He realized the stakes were even higher than he had imagined. Not only were Titans evolving, and humanity's wars accelerating, but his very existence was now a critical variable. One misstep could transform him from savior to tyrant, from observer to harbinger of destruction. He opened his eyes, determination burning in their depths. "Then I have to act," he said, voice firm. "But I will not fight humanity. I will not become the monster I've glimpsed. I will find another way. A way to stabilize the future without destroying what I swore to protect." Armin nodded, his expression resolute. "Then let's figure it out. Together." Silver took a deep breath, focusing on the threads of time before him, on the scouts around him, and on the countless lives that depended on his choices. The path forward was uncertain, the danger immense, and yet a single truth resonated through him. The future was not fixed. It could bend, shift, and change, if he had the courage to steer it. As he steadied himself and looked across the battlefield, Silver's vision expanded, and a chilling question burned in his mind. If one version of the future showed him fighting humanity itself, what invisible forces, or choices yet to be made, could push him toward that path? The halls of the walls had never felt colder. What should have been a place of strategy, planning, and trust had grown taut with tension, the very air vibrating with suspicion. Silver moved carefully through the council chambers, quills brushing the ceiling as he hovered just above the floor, aura faintly flickering. Eyes followed him everywhere. Not with awe this time, but with apprehension, calculation, and in some corners, thinly veiled fear. It had started subtly. Whispers in the barracks, quiet debates among commanders, the careful observation of his every movement. "The telekinetic soldier," one officer muttered. "What if he's more dangerous than the Titans themselves?" Silver's heart tightened. It was true. His powers were unprecedented in this world. Every battle had proven that he could turn the tide, could bend physical reality around him, could lift Titans with a thought, move entire walls to protect civilians, and anticipate attacks before they happened. But the very same strength that had saved lives now painted him as a threat, not to the enemy, but to his allies. Mikas's eyes softened, yet the tension between them was palpable. "They're scared," she said quietly, her voice almost lost beneath the murmurs. "They don't understand you, Silver. And fear changes people." Silver's gaze fell to the floor. He had known this possibility, but confronting it in real time was far more disorienting than he had imagined. It wasn't just humans outside the walls who could perceive him as dangerous. It was humanity itself, those he sought to protect, who now viewed him as a variable they could not control, a wild card in their fragile existence. The political factions had been patient, weighing their options, whispering behind closed doors. But patience had limits. The nobles, the military police, even some of the lower-ranking commanders, all had begun to question the wisdom of relying on an entity they could not fully understand. To them, Silver was not an ally. He was a potential weapon. One mistake, one uncontrolled surge, one act of defiance, and he could eclipse the Titans in devastation. Power demands accountability, one officer said aloud during a council meeting. But this is beyond human reckoning. How can we trust someone who isn't even of this world? Levi's eyes were sharp as daggers, yet even he seemed wary of the growing unease. They don't understand control, he muttered, almost to himself. He's not a weapon. He's not a threat. Not yet. But they'll try to make him one. Silver clenched his fists, aura flaring slightly in response. He knew Levi was right. The fear wasn't about him personally. It was about the power he represented. Being powerful, he realized, meant being feared. No matter how noble the intentions, no matter how carefully he measured his actions. Fear could fracture trust faster than any Titan could destroy a wall. The first warning came as a subtle vibration in the air, barely perceptible through the psychic threads he had learned to sense. A glimmer of motion, an anomaly in the otherwise orderly ranks of the council guards. Silver's eyes narrowed. He focused, instinctively tracing the energy patterns, reading movement faster than any human eye could. Before he could react, the air shivered with kinetic disruption. A dart, tipped with a strange, fast-acting poison, streaked toward him. Silver barely reacted in time, lifting it with a telekinetic pulse, hurling it into the ceiling, where it embedded harmlessly in stone. The council erupted into chaos, shouts echoing as guards drew swords, scanning for intruders. Silver hovered, aura flaring in warning. Whoever had attempted the attack had known exactly how to bypass human reflexes, targeting him before the scouts could intervene. Someone inside the walls had made a move. Levi stepped beside him, blade drawn. Inside, he said flatly. This wasn't random. Someone here thinks you're the problem. Mikasa's hand rested on Silver's shoulder, steady but tense. They don't want to see the truth, she said. They don't want a soldier who can protect everyone. They want control. And you represent freedom. Silver's quills bristled with energy. He had spent so long weighing the morality of saving lives, balancing fate, and restraining his powers. Now he faced a threat he could not fight head-on without risking the very trust he had worked to build. And yet, stepping back wasn't an option. Not while betrayal lurked within the walls, meant to protect him. He reached out, sensing the psychic imprint of intent, tracing the energy of the would-be assassin, narrowing the possibilities. Whoever was responsible was calculating, patient, and skilled. This was no random act of desperation. This was premeditated, political, and precise. And then a chilling realization struck him. The attack wasn't about killing him yet. It was a warning, a message to demonstrate that power, no matter how benevolent, came with consequences. That fear could make allies enemies in an instant. Silver's eyes glowed faintly blue as he hovered in the council room, scanning the room, feeling the tension tighten like a drawn bowstring. One thing was clear. Trust was fragile, and power alone could never guarantee loyalty. As the walls around him whispered with uncertainty and treachery, Silver sensed another presence. A shadow among the council, moving deliberately, waiting for the perfect moment. And in that instant, he realized the assassination attempt was only the beginning. Someone inside the walls was already planning the next strike. And this time, it might not miss. The night was still, but not peaceful. Silver hovered above Wall Maria, the moonlight casting long shadows over shattered buildings and scorched earth. His quills shimmered faintly, blue energy rippling across the air like a current in a storm. Yet it was not the battlefield that weighed on him tonight. It was the silent, unbearable knowledge that his presence here, in this fractured reality, might doom the world he had left behind. Fragments of his own timeline flickered in his mind. A city bathed in sunlight. People he knew and cared for, living ordinary lives. The future of his own world. All balanced on a fragile thread. And now, every action here, every battle fought to save humanity within the walls, tugged at that thread. With each use of his psychic power, each interference in history, he risked unraveling the world he had sworn to protect. I can't, Silver whispered to himself, voice lost on the wind. If I stay, if I fight here, what happens to them? To my own world? He clenched his fists, aura flaring in tension. His mission had always been to prevent catastrophe, to correct wrongs in the flow of time. But the moment he had crossed into this reality, the rules had shifted. He was no longer merely a savior. He was a variable, a catalyst whose decisions might ripple across multiple worlds. One world to save, one world to preserve, and both potentially hanging by a thread he could break with a single misstep. Silver's psychic vision flickered, showing glimpses of Aaron, Armin, Mikasa, the people here he had begun to care for, humanity struggling to survive. He saw them as allies, friends, and innocents. And then, almost impossibly, he saw images of his home, the city, the skyline, the people who counted on him to return. He was the protector in both realities, but he could only be in one place at a time. One choice meant salvation for one world, and potential destruction for the other. The scouts' voices echoed faintly in his mind. Hanga's excitement over research, Levi's caution, Mikasa's steadfast loyalty. They depended on him here. Yet, in the recesses of his consciousness, the faces of his own world's inhabitants cried out silently, vulnerable and unaware of the danger he had brought by crossing dimensions. Silver's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden shudder in the air. A temporal ripple, subtle at first, then violently tearing at the edges of reality. His hands rose instinctively, quills bristling as he tried to stabilize the disturbance. The timeline was rupturing again. Unstable, fragile, dangerous. And this rupture was different. It wasn't caused by Titans, nor by the Scouts' movements. It was caused by his own existence. The very fact that he had entered this world, bringing energy from a dimension that should not intersect. Armin's voice reached him through the psychic resonance, gentle but firm. Silver, you can't carry this alone. You're not a god. Even if you can see the threads of the future, even if you can move the impossible. Some choices have consequences no one can bear alone. Silver's jaw tightened. I don't have a choice, he shouted, voice breaking against the psychic winds. If I stay, this world survives. But my own could be destroyed. If I leave, I protect my future. But everyone here dies. How do I decide whose lives are worth saving? How do I decide between worlds? A cold wind tore across the wall, carrying whispers that seemed almost sentient, voices that he could not identify, speaking in a cadence of fate itself. Choose or be torn apart. Silver's heart pounded. The temporal instability grew stronger, creating a low hum that resonated through his very being. Each vibration carried the weight of possibility, each pulse a warning that hesitation would not be tolerated. The moonlight caught his quills, highlighting the tension etched into every line of his body. His psychic energy flared in brilliant arcs, illuminating the darkness. But the brilliance was hollow. The brilliance could save. It could destroy. It could unmake entire timelines. And in this moment, he understood that power alone would not solve the dilemma. His strength, his foresight, his ability to act. None of it mattered if he could not decide. Silver's gaze swept over the wall, over the forest, over the distant horizon where Titans still lurked. He saw humanity's resilience, its fragile hope. And then he saw the faint shimmer of his own world, barely visible, like a reflection in fractured glass, waiting for him to return. The weight pressed down on him, heavier than any Titan, any battle, any threat he had ever faced. The choice was not one of victory or defeat. It was a choice between existence itself. One world would survive, one could fall, and the decision was his alone. As Silver's aura blazed against the encroaching darkness, The very air split with temporal distortion. Reality quivered, walls bending, shadows stretching unnaturally. The timeline rupture was forming again, larger, faster, uncontrollable. And in the heart of that crack, he glimpsed a figure that should not exist. Himself, torn between worlds, waiting for a decision he was not sure he could make. The sky above the walls darkened unnaturally, clouds twisting as if the world itself recoiled from the impending storm. Silver hovered over the outer district, sensing tremors in both the earth and the currents of time. His quills bristled, a faint electric hum echoing in the air, warning him that something monumental was about to unfold. Reports arrived quickly, fragmented and chaotic. Marleyan ships sighted off the coast, unusual troop movements across the sea, reconnaissance titans moving faster than expected. Silver's mind raced. Every calculation, every probability he had studied since arriving in this world, screamed that none of this should be happening yet. The war, the catastrophic clash of nations and titans, was supposed to come later, when humanity's defenses were weaker, when the sequence of events aligned in a certain historical inevitability. Yet here it was, accelerated by his very presence. He clenched his fists, psychic energy coiling around him like steel cables. I caused this. My existence here. My interference. It triggered this early invasion. The realization was crushing. Every action he had taken to protect the walls, to guide the scouts, to prevent catastrophe, had inadvertently become the catalyst for the catastrophe itself. History was rewriting itself, and he was at the center of it. Below him, the streets of the district filled with panic. Civilians ran blindly, eyes wide as Marleyan airships descended, dropping soldiers and strange mechanical equipment never seen before. Titans, some familiar, some bizarre mutations, surged forward, drawn to Silver's energy like predators sensing an unfamiliar prey. Levi's voice cracked sharply through comms. Silver, concentrate on the Titans. Protect civilians first. The rest we'll handle. Silver focused, lifting rubble with telekinesis, forming barriers to shield fleeing civilians, and hurling debris with precise force to slow advancing Titans. The scouts moved around him in synchronized chaos, trusting his abilities but wary of the sheer scale of the threat. Every movement demanded strategy, foresight, and precision. Failure meant entire districts would be obliterated in minutes. Mikasa's voice broke through the tension. We're stretched too thin. Even with him, we can't cover every breach. Silver's aura flared brighter, quills slicing the air as he created psychic barriers around the weakest structures. Titans crashed against his defenses, some staggering, others adapting, pushing harder than before. And then, through the psychic feedback, he felt it. The unmistakable presence of not one, but multiple Titan shifters approaching. Eren, Reiner, Zeke. Others he had only glimpsed in fragmented visions. Each radiated a unique signature, coordinated, intelligent, and deadly. Silver's stomach sank. The timing, the precision, the overwhelming power of their advance. It was no coincidence. This was Marley's elite strike force, unleashed prematurely because he had been seen. Because the existence of a telekinetic entity had disrupted their careful calculations. Armin's voice came in over the comms, tight with urgency. Silver, they're shifters. All of them. You can't stop them alone. We need a plan. But Silver's focus was already split. He had to defend civilians, coordinate with the scouts, and now contend with shifters who could match him blow for blow. Every move required balancing offensive and defensive calculations at speeds faster than human thought. He realized that even his powers had limits. Sheer force alone would not be enough. The stakes had escalated beyond survival. This was now a battle for the integrity of the entire world timeline. He looked toward the horizon where the first shifter emerged, muscles and skin stretching into monstrous form, eyes fixed on the walls, and instinctively on him. Silver's mind raced. They know I'm here. They were sent because of me. The war, the apocalypse, I triggered it, and in that moment, a flash of understanding hit him with terrifying clarity. Every intervention, every attempt to prevent catastrophe, had drawn the timeline closer to the very disaster he was trying to stop. His presence had accelerated history itself. Silver's aura pulsed violently, the ground trembling beneath him as he prepared for the inevitable clash. Around him, the scouts braced for the unprecedented. Humans and titans, allies and enemies, all converging in a chaos no strategy could fully contain. As the first shifter lunged, earth cracking beneath its feet, Silver's psychic vision expanded, revealing the full scale of the attack. Multiple shifters descending from all directions, each coordinating with Marleyan forces, each targeting the walls and Silver himself. And in the back of his mind, a chilling thought settled. I am the spark that started the fire. Can I survive the blaze I created? Or will I be consumed by it first? The battlefield was a symphony of chaos. Titans thundered through ruined streets, their massive forms crushing walls and sending debris flying like deadly projectiles. Marleyan artillery screamed from beyond the horizon, shattering what little calm remained. The scouts scrambled, their blades slicing through the air as they moved in practiced, desperate patterns to shield the fleeing civilians. And at the center of it all, Silver hovered, quills bristling, aura flaring like a storm on the brink of rupture. The air shimmered under the weight of his psychic energy. He had been pushing himself harder than ever, extending the limits of his power, bending the battlefield itself to protect humanity. Trees were uprooted, walls levitated, titans hurled away as if mere toys, but every act of intervention came with a cost. His body screamed in protest, nerve endings alight with psychic feedback. Even his quills, hardened through countless battles, vibrated violently with the strain. Silver's mind raced faster than his body could move. He could feel the pulse of the battlefield, the movements of every scout, every titan, every artillery blast. Yet he couldn't control everything. He had to prioritize, had to make impossible choices in seconds. Yet even that was slipping from him. His vision blurred at the edges, the world around him warping slightly as he attempted to stabilize the chaos. For the first time, fear gnawed at him. Not for the timeline, not for some abstract future, but for himself. For the first time, Silver. The hero who had always calculated every move, anticipated every threat, understood the vulnerability of mortality. His aura faltered slightly as exhaustion began to take its toll, and he realized how close he had come to truly dying, not just failing. Levi's voice cut through the noise, sharp and commanding. "Silver, hold on! Don't overextend yourself!" But even as Levi shouted, Silver knew he was already beyond the point of return. The more he pushed, the more the battlefield itself seemed to respond, bending under the intensity of his psychic manipulation. Rubble twisted, air shimmered, and time itself felt stretched thin. Every titan that lunged at him was repelled, but each was more adaptive than the last. Abnormal shifters moved in ways he had not anticipated, testing his defenses, exploiting the smallest cracks in his focus. Mikasa and the scouts formed a protective perimeter, moving with precise synchronicity, each step a silent promise to shield him if he fell. Yet the danger wasn't just external. Silver could feel the strain of his powers ricocheting through his body, threatening to break him from within. Every thought, every motion, every psychic push brought him closer to collapse. Then it happened. The first tear in reality itself. A jagged ripple tore through the battlefield midair, cutting through titans and soldiers alike. Light bent unnaturally around it, color shifting and bleeding as if the world had been sliced open. Silver's quills bristled violently, aura expanding in frantic bursts. He could sense the rupture resonating with his own energy. The very act of his intervention, his bending of reality, was creating fissures in the fabric of space-time. Silver, What is that? Hang's voice was frantic over the comms, awe and panic mingling. I I don't know, Silver shouted, teeth gritted. His quills glowed brighter than ever as he tried to stabilize the tear, to hold the fragments of reality together. But it resisted, pulsing with an energy that was almost alive. Titans nearby screamed in confusion, some staggering, some turning to flee as the rupture warped their instincts. Levi's hand gripped his blade tightly. Get him out of there! Now! But there was no time. Silver's body convulsed from the psychic backlash, limbs trembling as the strain threatened to snap him entirely. Around him, the scouts risked everything, forming barriers, pulling him away from immediate danger, shielding him with nothing but courage and precise timing. Yet even as they worked, the ripple expanded. Buildings near the edge of the city twisted into impossible angles, the air vibrating with high-pitched tones that made ears ache. Silver realized the terrifying truth. The battlefield, already teetering on collapse, was now a conduit. Every psychic exertion, every telekinetic strike, every protective maneuver fed into the rupture, widening it further. And within that rupture, he glimpsed fragments of impossible visions. The ruined cities of his own timeline, titans marching across unfamiliar landscapes, and a fractured Silver, himself staring back, a warning written in every flicker of distorted light. His vision narrowed. The scouts around him were shouting, calling out instructions, but their voices sounded distant, like echoes in a dream. His body was failing, and yet instinctively he pushed forward one last time, stabilizing a massive shifter mid-leap, hurling it away from civilians. The psychic energy tore through him like fire, and he collapsed, unconscious, hovering in midair, only barely held by lingering kinetic energy. The battlefield fell into stunned silence for a heartbeat, punctuated only by the distant roar of titans and the shriek of incoming Marleyan artillery. The scouts risked everything, forming a human shield around him, aware that without him, survival was nearly impossible. And then Silver's psychic awareness prickled, a low vibration crawling across his mind like ice. The tear in reality expanded further, growing jagged and chaotic, and from its depths, a shadowed form began to emerge. Something ancient, something aware. It wasn't a titan. It wasn't human. And in that moment, the scouts realized whatever was coming through the rip would not recognize allies, enemies, or walls. It would only see destruction, and Silver's collapse had opened the gate for it. The sky split into fractured shards of light and shadow, as if the very heavens had been shattered. Across the walls, time itself buckled. Titans moved with erratic, unpredictable motion. Some doubled in size mid-stride, others flickered between forms, merging elements from their past, present, and possible futures. Entire streets seemed to fold into impossible angles, buildings stretching and compressing as reality refused to obey natural laws. Silver hovered at the epicenter of the distortion, quills bristling with energy that burned hotter than ever before. Every fiber of his being screamed in warning. He could feel history unraveling in his mind, events colliding and overlapping like colliding storms. Civilians who had already fled appeared again, screaming twice, moving through spaces they had already left. Titans struck with impossible timing, some attacking where they had been centuries ago, others predicting movements that hadn't yet occurred. The battlefield had become a kaleidoscope of chaos, and Silver's psychic senses struggled to track it all. This is worse than anything I imagined, he muttered. Teeth gritted, quills humming with raw energy. Each pulse of his telekinesis barely held the fragments of time together. If I fail, the past, present, and future will annihilate each other. The scouts, exhausted from the endless waves of titans, looked to him with a mixture of awe and fear. Even Levi, standing rigidly at the forefront, seemed momentarily shaken, his usual composure cracking under the surreal chaos. Silver, whatever you're doing, Don't stop, but don't burn yourself out, he warned, voice tight. Silver's eyes, glowing faintly silver in the distorted light, scanned the battlefield. Every action he took had to balance two realities: protecting the present from immediate death, while preventing the past and future from collapsing into a singularity. Every hurl of debris, every psychic barrier, every levitated wall was a knife-edge act of precision. One misstep could erase thousands of lives, or worse, undo the bonds he had formed. His heart tightened at the thought. He had formed connections here, not just strategic alliances, but friendships, trust, and perhaps something resembling family. Armin's thoughtful concern, Mikasa's protective vigilance, Hanga's scientific fascination. These were real. If he stabilized the timeline, many of them might cease to exist in this sequence, or worse, remember nothing of him. The weight of that knowledge was heavier than any Titan could ever impose. And then, the true horror began. Silver noticed it first in the edge of his vision, parts of his body shimmering, fading like static in a broken transmission. His aura flickered violently, quills trembling as if the world itself was erasing at him. Panic surged through him. No, not now. I can't fade here. Not when there's still time to fix this. He reached outward, psychic energy lancing through the battlefield, attempting to anchor himself, to tether his existence to this timeline. Titans collided into the distortions, some flattening into impossible forms, others blinking into being, eyes glowing with alien awareness. Screams echoed from everywhere and nowhere, a haunting chorus that made Silver's chest tighten. He was the eye of the storm, and the storm itself was tearing him apart. Levi shouted for retreat, but Silver shook his head. I can't. If I stop now, all of this collapses. His voice, strained and raw, carried over the battlefield, a stark command amidst chaos. The scouts formed a defensive circle, levitating debris and maintaining barriers, giving him space to focus. Every second counted, and every second was slipping through cracks in time. Silver's visions sharpened. He saw glimpses of his own world, the timeline he had left behind. Bright, unyielding, yet fragile. He realized the paradox. Saving this world might doom his own, and saving his own world might allow this one to burn. The psychic strain made his mind flicker between both realities, fragments of conversations and memories overlapping like ghostly echoes. His quills flared, aura spiraling outward in a desperate attempt to reweave the collapsing threads of history. Sweat dripped down his face, muscles trembling. Titans blinked, twisted, and adapted to his psychic defenses. Yet Silver fought, each push of energy a lifeline for both worlds. And then he felt it. The first tug of absolute erasure. A portion of his existence blinked out, starting from his left arm. He flexed, feeling the sensation of nothingness creeping in. Panic gripped him like ice. If I disappear, everything collapses. All bonds, all hope, all future. Gone. Silver pushed harder, screaming in defiance, as the battlefield itself seemed to breathe around him. And just as a massive shifter lunged from the fractured horizon, reality tore open wider, revealing a shadowed, incomprehensible form. An entity older than Titans, older than humanity, drawn to the temporal chaos he had created. Its gaze, or whatever passed for awareness, locked onto him. And in that instant, Silver felt the undeniable certainty. If I fail to anchor myself, I will vanish entirely, and no one will remain to remember that I ever existed. The air was heavy with a tension that no battle cry could pierce. The battlefield was silent, but not in peace, in expectation. Fractured fragments of reality shimmered like broken glass around Silver, bending the horizon, twisting light, and casting impossible shadows across the ruined cityscape. The ripples of time he had been struggling to hold together pulsed violently, a living entity threatening to collapse on itself. He hovered at the center, exhausted beyond measure, quills bristling, psychic energy radiating like a storm held in fragile suspension. Every moment here, every bond he had forged, the scout's wary trust. Hanga's fascinated encouragement. Mikasa's protective vigilance, even Levy's clipped concern, now weighed upon him. These connections, real and fragile, tethered him emotionally, even as reality itself threatened to tear him from existence. He realized that the timeline he fought to preserve wasn't just events and catastrophes. It was the people who had shaped it alongside him. And now he had to decide, restore what was, or forge something new. Silver's hands glowed with psychic energy as he reached out to stabilize the fractures, to anchor the flow of time itself. Memories of past decisions, battles, losses, triumphs, flashed across his mind. The weight of responsibility was absolute. One miscalculation, one hesitation, and not just lives, but entire worlds could be erased. And yet he understood that strength alone would not decide the outcome. Hope required choice, and he would have to choose for everyone. Mikasa floated closer, her expression unreadable beneath the streaks of soot and dust. Silver, whatever you decide, just know. Her voice faltered for the first time, laden with emotion. We trust you. Hang stepped forward, eyes wide, shining with awe and fear. You've done more than any human could, but remember, it's not just about power. It's about responsibility. You decide the future now. Levy, ever practical, only nodded once, his sharp gaze fixed on Silver. Don't let sentiment cloud judgment. Lives depend on the choice you make. Silver's chest tightened. Each word, each gesture was a reminder that he had grown attached to this world. He had grown attached to these people. Yet he felt the pull of his original world, the future he had left behind, fragile and vulnerable. If he stayed, it might prevent the catastrophic collapse he had foreseen here, but at the cost of everything he had known. If he returned, he could preserve his own timeline, but this world, these bonds, might crumble. Time fractured further. Across the battlefield, titans warped and flickered, some frozen mid-step, others collapsing into memories of battles that had not yet occurred. The ground rippled like water. Silver could feel himself being stretched between realities, existence itself fraying at the edges. And yet, in that moment of ultimate vulnerability, clarity struck. Hope was not a guarantee. It was a decision, a willful choice to fight for it, regardless of odds. He looked toward Armin, standing at the edge of the protective circle, eyes wide with understanding and fear. Silver began, voice trembling with the gravity of choice. I can't save everything, but I can choose a path where at least someone has a chance. Mikasa stepped closer again, placing a hand on his arm. Then choose wisely. We'll stand by you, whatever happens. Silver's quills flared brighter than ever as he gathered every last ounce of psychic energy, feeling the weight of reality bend beneath his control. The fractured timeline pulsed violently in response, as if aware of the impending decision. The future was not simply waiting. It was watching, and it demanded a hero willing to shoulder the consequences. He closed his eyes, focusing. Every battle, every life, every relationship he had forged across this world and the next coalesced in his mind. His arms stretched outward, quills glinting in the warped light, energy radiating in waves, strong enough to bend the fabric of reality. He understood then that the act of choosing would ripple across all timelines, and that there would be no going back once he committed. A tremor ran through the battlefield. The Titans froze mid-lunge, Marleyan soldiers halted their advance, and the remaining scouts watched, holding their breath as Silver prepared to enact the choice that would define the future. The air around him shimmered, reality bending, twisting, straining against the force of his will. And then, It began. A blinding temporal wave erupted from Silver, a surge of light and energy so pure it seared the horizon, stretching across fractured cities and war-torn fields. Time itself seemed to scream, folding, compressing, and scattering in every direction. The scouts shielded their eyes. Levi gritted his teeth. Mikasa's grip tightened, and Hanga's voice trembled in awe. Silver hovered at the epicenter, quills glowing like a star on the brink of supernova, knowing that the moment of decision had arrived. And as the wave expanded outward, he realized, with a mix of fear and resolve, once this wave completes its course, nothing will be as it was, and the future will finally choose its hero. The battlefield was silent. Broken walls, charred earth, and shattered streets told stories of wars that had almost been, yet moved on, without memory of the one who had changed their course. The sky, once fractured with temporal distortion, now stretched wide and clear, painted in soft oranges and grays of a new dawn. There was no fanfare, no hero celebration, only the quiet hum of a world catching its breath. Tentative, wary, and alive. The scouts walked among the ruins, eyes scanning for threats, bodies tense with trained vigilance. But there was a subtle difference. Movements once dictated by fear now carried faint traces of hope. Levi's gaze lingered over the horizon, as if expecting to see the figure who had turned the tides. Yet Silver was nowhere to be found. His quills, his psychic aura, all had vanished without a trace. A vacuum of absence hung in the air, as if the world itself remembered him in instinct, but not in story. Hang knelt beside a fallen piece of debris, fingers tracing strange, faint energy residuals in the air. "It's like he was here," she murmured, almost to herself, "but no one else. No one will remember." The glow of his psychic signature had faded, leaving only whispers of movement, the echo of a presence that had shaped events so decisively that the world had been forced to bend around it. Mikasa stood at the edge of the Wall Maria cliff, silent, eyes scanning the horizon where titans once roamed. Her hand tightened on her blade, a reflex born of battles fought alongside Silver, even if she could no longer fully recall the details. Memories of someone saving lives, deflecting death, moving with impossible speed. They lingered like a dream she couldn't place, leaving a sense of both loss and inexplicable relief. Armin knelt beside rubble, analyzing the shifted battle maps and the altered paths of war. "The war, it's still here," he said softly, voice trembling with awe. "But somehow, smaller, less inevitable." Something changed. His fingers traced faint lines of psychic energy lingering in the air, subtle distortions that hinted at the intervention of a force beyond comprehension. Yet the hand that had guided them, that had borne the impossible weight of worlds, was gone. The world had healed, but quietly, almost painfully. Titans that should have appeared months earlier showed signs of delayed emergence, and some Marleyan maneuvers unfolded differently, subtly, almost imperceptibly. No one could explain why history bent the way it did. Only fragments of impossibly precise interventions remained. Fallen debris suspended slightly off the ground, walls cracked at unusual angles, and a fleeting blue shimmer in the distance that vanished the moment anyone looked directly at it. Even Levi, normally stoic, paused, watching the horizon. We survived, somehow. And yet, someone did more than survive for us. He didn't name Silver because he didn't remember, and perhaps the world had decided that memory was too dangerous, too disruptive for the timeline to hold. The hero had acted and then been erased. Not forgotten, not erased from reality entirely, but woven out of conscious history, like a ghost whose effects ripple silently through the world. Hang's eyes flickered with realization. He wasn't human, not fully, not just another soldier. His energy, his existence, it belonged to something beyond us, beyond this world. And yet, The world remembers in ways it can't comprehend. Maybe that's enough. She touched a faint residual glow of psychic energy suspended over a collapsed wall segment. The light pulsed once, faint, impossibly blue. Then it disappeared, leaving nothing but the wind to carry its echo. The scouts gathered quietly, unspoken acknowledgement passing between them. Battles would continue. Titans would rise. Marley would plot. And humanity would endure. But something had shifted at the root of it all. A hero had acted without recognition, without fame or gratitude, and the world had been allowed a chance to survive. The weight of that choice, of that invisible intervention, hung heavy over the silent ruins. And far in the distance, among ruins where no living being dared to venture, a faint flicker of blue telekinetic energy pulsed once. It was subtle, a heartbeat of motion, a shimmer against the wind, and then it vanished again. Not a ghost, not a memory. Something more, a promise, a trace that perhaps the hero who had saved this world, the boy from tomorrow, had not truly been erased. The air was quiet again. Yet the world seemed to breathe differently now, alive with possibility, fragile hope, and the knowledge that someone, somewhere, had chosen to fight for the future, even when the future could never remember. And in that flicker of blue, the impossible truth lingered. Maybe heroes exist beyond memory, shaping events in ways no one can see, yet always felt. In the silence, the faint blue glow whispered one last time across the horizon, a subtle pulse in the wind, a reminder that even in worlds that remember nothing, hope endures. And perhaps, just perhaps, the hero still watches.